Okay, 1, 2, and then 3.
I'd like to know what you think, whether you think positively about this move amongst the Palestinian parties to come together to form an alliance for the elections.
Yeah.
Because we had, I think, over a year ago now, Jamal Zahalka here, who seemed to be very enthusiastic about the fact that it could give them more seats in the country. So I just wondered what you think about that.
Well, I think one of the motivations for the joint ticket was that there was a change in law in the Knesset where they changed the threshold that you needed to be able to get a seat in the Knesset from 2.75 to 3.25, which is usually what the Arab parties get anyway. And so they decided it'd be better tactically if they went on a joint list. If you ask young Israeli Palestinians what they think about it, they're all very cynical, like many young people are about politicians and politics and political parties, very cynical about it. I think it's a good move, and I think if, again, because it's a tricky one for Palestinian Israelis, because on the one hand, if they don't go and vote, there's no one to represent them in the Knesset. But if they go and vote, they're participating in a government and a system which is oppressing and occupying their fellow Palestinians in the West Bank. And it's a tricky place to be in. So the question is, great, they're on a joint ticket, but how many Palestinians are going to go out and vote on the day of the elections? And the religious and the right wing, they go out and vote in huge numbers. I say to everyone they should go vote, again, because, just do it. Go vote, because then those voices, those counts don't go to the right wing. So I think it's great. I usually vote for Balan. That's who I voted for in the past. So I think I might vote for them again, but I don't know, who knows. I think it's a good move in the right direction.
Thanks.
This gentleman.
It's really inspiring to hear you speak, and very energising. And I think we probably all feel that we'd like to do even more than perhaps we are doing. Is there any single thing that you think is greater leverage than anything else? So perhaps with a few people here, I don't do Facebook. And you wonder whether or not something like that is just lost in the drizzle of everything else, whereas a handwritten old snail mail letter may or may not be any better. Not buying stuff at supermarkets, writing to religious leaders. What would you say is the single most effective action that we can take?
Jeff and I discussed this before he went to Canada, and we sort of talked about what can we be giving our audiences when he's there and I'm here. And I think one of the things we agreed upon is really sharpen your targets, because there is so much out there. I mean, there is so much going on, and it can be incredibly overwhelming. And I think, literally, especially if you're already involved in the BDS movement, is sharpen your targets. Say, okay, this is what I'm going to focus on. This, I'm going to join a campaign that's already existing, whether it's international or local, that's focusing on this one target, whether that be a particular corporation or a particular company. Focus on that, move on to the next. Focus on that, move on to the next. And whatever means you use, whether it's social media or letter writing, I think it's all vital. I mean, for example, Amnesty International have a campaign now about Abdullah Abu Ahmed, and they have the address on there, and they have a letter example, because he's a political prisoner. A letter example, you can write a snail mail letter or email to, I don't remember, I think there's the head of the military judge who's there, I think. But if you go to Amnesty's website, they have all those details there. And I think not trying to reinvent the wheel, because there's so much already going on. And so just join, sort of bolster whatever's existing and sharpen your targets, always sharpen your targets. And I'd say try and look locally, try and see what connections Manchester local authority have with Israeli companies or Israeli corporations with the Israeli government. See if there's anything, because actually in the local councils you can make differences if you get enough people together to put pressure on a local councillor. And I think that's a really great thing, is to look locally, look at what's going on in Manchester, what connections Manchester have with Israel.
Ruth, can I just interject, because that's exactly why we have a Stop G4S campaign here, because our council is privatising services and it's outsourcing them to G4S, which, as we always say on our Stop G4S demonstrations, is a serial human rights abuser. So that's one way in which we have focused locally.
There's a question.
John.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I was about to argue with Ruth about the usefulness or otherwise of dealing with this particular scabby, useless council. But I'm not going to say that. I thought your point about insanity and about desperation was very interesting, and you were saying, I mean, why would they vote again to do house demolitions, and why would they repeat this? Why would they be so desperate? And I think you did answer that, because the stakes are raised. Since last summer, the stakes are raised.
Yep.
They didn't win in Gaza. They reduced it to rubble, and they didn't beat the spirit of the Palestinians. And that means that the stakes are raised. They're into absolute meltdown at the moment. So I think it's therefore no surprise that we're seeing even more reaction, more, as you described very adequately, very right-wing.
They're feeling the pressure.
Such that even what you call the left, and people were laughing here at the idea of, what we have to live with UKIP virtually legitimised, but what you're living with is considerably worse. The question I actually want to ask, you may not be involved at all, but very specifically around housing and land, is do you have anything to do with the Jewish National Front, or do you have anything to say about it?
We don't, I mean, as ICAHD, no. Me personally, yes. I mean, there's the Stop the JNF, which I don't know if they're based in Scotland. I don't know if that's Sophia who's doing that, but
Yes,
lots of discussions around that a few years ago, and sort of, JNF's a tricky, really, really tricky one. I actually have one personal connection to JNF, and when I go back, I'm going to have him meet me and ask him some difficult questions and see what he has to say. I mean, the JNF's, it's quite, that's the thing. JNF's a serious one, like the Kern it's a serious one, mainly because Al-Araqib and what's going on in the Negev desert. I think, ICAHD personally, as an organisation, no. But I just want to say, because this has come up, about this Israeli society, the Israeli government being insane. And I think one of the things people ask is, why is Israel doing what it's doing? And I mean, it's an issue of demographics. It's to prevent the development and expansion of the country's non-Jewish population. That's very clear. But it's also this aspect that Israel sees itself as the victim. They don't see Palestinians as being the victim here.
No.
And the reason that Israelis have to see themselves as the victim is because it justifies their oppressive behaviour. If you take away that victimhood, you're just the oppressor. And then you have to deal with the fact that you're the oppressor. And who wants to deal with that? Who wants to look themselves in the mirror and say, I'm a monster, this is what my government's doing in my name, this is what's going on? It's a very painful process. And so we desperately hold on to our victimhood. And so even if you hear Israelis during the summer, after the summer, even now, they'll say, yes, what we're doing is terrible, but. And everything that comes after that but is about being the victim. And so one of our responsibilities, both as Jews and Israeli Jews, is to constantly break down that image of us being the victim. But for me personally, it's taken time to find the language to use to get an Israeli Jew to understand me. Because when I talk to you about the occupation, you can understand it on a political level, on an analytical level, on a practical level. You know what I'm talking about. When I talk to Israelis about the occupation, I'm talking about something directly related to their identity. And so I'm breaking down their identity. It would be like me standing in front of Clayton and trying to convince him you are not a man. And breaking down that part of his identity. And it's painful, it's difficult. It's a process which you either do it to yourself and you educate yourself, because what you have in Israel is self-inflicted ignorance. I can forgive someone in the UK or the US not really understanding the situation from mainstream media. I can forgive them for that. I can't forgive Israelis for it. Because it's happening right there. How can you not see the separation wall and question it? How can you not see the checkpoints and question it? How can you not hear about house demolitions and question it? So just wanted to put that in there.
Okay, the gentleman in the red glasses.
I was wondering how you understand the rhetoric of religion to be working in Israel right now, because often when I read about Israel-Palestine, what I often read about is the conflict between Jews and Palestinians, which obviously is a very, it's religion versus, a national, a national territorial idea. So I'm wondering how you understand, maybe, in activist terms, if that's what you're more aware of, how the rhetoric of religion is kind of evolving in Israel, especially maybe now when we're looking at the Middle East and we're looking at more religious groups, their dynamics within the Middle East region, how you see that kind of developing.
I mean, first of all, to say that out of the region's 6 million Jews, out of the 6 million Jews who live in Israel and the settlers who live in the West Bank, 60%, over 60% consider themselves to be secular. That's our last census. They said, we're secular, we're not religious. Only 12% of the 6 million Jews are religious, like religious. That's not very much. We're a very secular country. What Israel would love more than anything is for this to be a conflict about religion. Because nobody can win a conflict of religion. Nobody, it's impossible. And they would love it to be that, because again, it depoliticizes the struggle. It depoliticizes the issues. It makes it, this is just about religion. This isn't about the Nakba. This isn't about the occupation. This isn't about house demolitions. This isn't about freedom of movement. This isn't about equal rights. It's about religion. And that's a really simplified analysis. And it's easier for Israelis to swallow than it is to swallow that this is a struggle about the things that it really is about. Much easier to say, you can brush it off. You can say, it's a struggle about religion. No one's going to win that. I can just forget about it. I don't need to support it. I just do anything about it because it's a struggle over God. It's not. I mean, we all know that. We all know that it's not. But you're right. In Israel, what's happening is they love to present this as being a struggle about religion. But I don't think we're becoming more religious. We're just becoming more nationalistic and racist. There are definitely religious elements there. I mean, you've got your nationalistic religious Jews, and they're definitely more prominent and have a louder voice and are running the government. So I can see from the outside how it looks like Israel is becoming sort of more religious, or on the ground it's not. And it's not at all. We're a very secular country still, very, very secular.
A question from Patrick?
Sorry, we're very secular, but just the religious analysis is what people want to hear, because it means that they can say, okay, I can wash my hands of this pleasure.
Patrick and then this.
I'd just like to ask you, following on from the question about religion, because obviously there's a huge propaganda about anti-Semitism, and people don't understand the difference between anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism.
Yeah.
But if the country is so secular, what's the thing that binds you together? Because why are the Jews bound together as the way that they are if they're secular? I don't really understand that.
Well, I guess it's the same. I guess it's the same like you have British Jews and American Jews. We're just Israeli Jews. Like, I think. I know it sounds really difficult. I understand the question. I understand the question. I don't know how. I understand it from being in Israel, an Israeli Jew. But how do I explain it? It's like that, though. I mean, it's like you've got British Jews, right? You're British Jewish. So in Israel, it's the same. You're Israeli Jewish. It's not the Jewish bit isn't about being. You have to be religious or a practicing Jew to be a Jew. Apparently, because it's through your mum, isn't it? I just have to say that whoever.
So your mum's not religious?
No, not at all. We do Sabbath. We do. I grew up doing the shishi, the Friday night dinners, and I still do them at home. But I consider myself more Buddhist than I do Jewish. Definitely more Buddhist than Jewish. But I think it's just, I don't know. It's like an identity thing, maybe, because people. That's the thing. My boyfriend, for example, the least religious person you could find, the most secular, who laughs at his family for doing candles on Friday night and then driving in the car on a Friday night or using their phones. He laughs at them for it. He says, you're so hypocritical. How can you say Shabbat Shalom to each other and then go and drive your car? And so, yes, I mean, even within Israel, there's this sort of, there is a discourse, a discussion. What does it mean to be Jewish? But I mean, not every Israeli is Jewish. Not every Jew is Israeli. And not every Jew is a Zionist. And not every Israeli is a Zionist.
Not every Zionist is a Jew.
And not every Zionist is a Jew. Exactly. So I think it's hard to answer that question. It's very much it's like an identity question almost. It's and how to say that about Israeli society. What binds us together? What binds them together? Us together? I don't know. It's a really good question.
Are you bound together by a big lie, do you think?
Probably.
Government lie that you're all under
Well,
oppression and you're all going to be killed. And
I don't know if it's just that, because look, you've got Mizrahi Jews, right? You've got Jews who didn't experience the Holocaust, who live in Israel. You know, Jews from Tunisia, from Morocco, Yemen, Iran, Iraq. You've Jews from Ethiopia, Russian Jews.
For years, for hundreds of years.
Yeah. And I think we're a very divided country. We're not unified by anything. We're unified by fear, perhaps, and nationalism, but we're a very divided country, extremely divided. And the government wants to keep it that way, because you keep your people divided, they can never unify to rise up against you. And so you've got your, so many places. So you've got your Ashkenazi Jews or Mizrahi Jews, you've got your secular, you've got your religious, you've got your Ethiopian Jews, you've got your refugees, you've got your Russian Jews. We're very, very, very divided. Well, religious, secular, of course. And we're not really unified as a country.
But it's the Palestinian and the Arab, the common enemy, that's the betrayal. Is that the big lie? Is that the big
I
story?
don't even think it's the Palestinians that are common enemy. For Israelis at the moment, the entire world is their enemy. Yeah, and to which you would say yes, because you're oppressing the Palestinians. You stop oppressing the Palestinians and then BDS will end. I mean, that's what I think a lot of Israelis forget. Like, BDS isn't the end goal. The end goal isn't to get everyone to boycott Israel and then we're done. The end goal is to end the occupation. BDS is a tactic to get there.
Okay, we've got time for 3 more questions.
There was that lady at the back.
This gentleman here, this lady here, and
there was someone who has a
that
question.
lady at the back.
I was reading a book, I don't know if you heard of it, Max Blumenthal.
Yes.
I read a book called Goliath. And it's
The?
Goliath, about Israeli society. It was written 2 years ago. And it was one of the most frightening, books I've ever read. It was reminded me very much of Nazi Germany, the rise of Hitler. Is Israel any danger of going now?
That's exactly what I was trying to say before about that we have this real mixture of militarism, nationalism and religion. That's exactly what Nazi Germany was. Nazi Germany was a strong mixture of a religious ideology, of militarism and nationalism. And it's such a dangerous mix. I'd like to think that we'll stop ourselves before we get to that point. But Israel killed over 2,000 people in 7 weeks over the summer. That's a very disturbing number. And it was actually Physicians for Human Rights who were allowed into Gaza afterwards, and they discovered over 80% of those 2,000 were civilians. And the biggest fear is that we'll just do something like that again, but much worse, and the world won't stop us. I mean, look, when we call on sanctions on Israel, when we ask the UK or the US to put sanctions on Israel, we're not asking them to fight Israel, we're asking them to stop enabling it. When a country commits a crime, you just stop enabling it. Israel would not be able to do what it's doing if it didn't have the immunity it has from the international community. I'm not necessarily saying that the international community supports Israel. What I'm saying is that they don't stop them, they don't prevent them when they commit crimes, they don't punish them, they make harsh resolutions. Why do we find it so easy to put sanctions on Iran but we don't do the same thing in Israel? Iran's broken resolutions and so we put sanctions on them. Israel breaks them, we don't put sanctions on them. And that's what's allowing Israel to. And honestly, I'd say that if Israel does what it does again, the blood's on the hands of the international community, because they could have stopped us. They could have stopped us.
Yeah, it's something I'm very, very worried about.
We're all very, very worried
Have you ever
about
thought
it.
of speaking in synagogues about this and trying to explain to the Jewish community?
I'm going to tell you something which I haven't told anyone till today, and I'm going to ask everyone in this room to keep it to yourselves for the moment. But I actually had a meeting with the Board of Deputies on Monday. They asked to meet with me. They asked to meet with me because Lawrence, their treasurer, just resigned as. I mean, that is a great move in the right direction. It really is such a great, and we need to give support to those people who are coming up brave enough to stand up against Israel, who are saying, okay, this isn't just because I'm Jewish, I don't need to blindly support Israel, and we must support them. And so I was happy to meet with them, and I think it's a move in the right direction. Yeah, I think in York, I'm going to meet a rabbi on Monday in Edinburgh, on Sunday in Edinburgh, and I know I'll have a Jewish community there who I'll be speaking to, and so I think it's happening, I think it's starting. I think people are just really scared, to be honest. I think they're really scared. I'm not scared anymore because all my friends know me and they know my politics, and now they're asking to go on tours and they want to see Jerusalem that I'm talking about, and there is a sea change. I mean, there is a sea change. Just as we have a sea change into like more extreme right wingers, there is a sea change in Israel as well, where people are starting to question what it is their government's doing, and in the Jewish community. It's just a shame it had to happen after the death of over 2,000 people. I think Gaza really was a slap in the face for a lot of people. Yeah.
This lady there.
Hi, I'm from Malaysia, and I'm just an exchange student over here, but I'm really truly happy that I get an opportunity to come here right now.
Thank you.
And first and foremost, I'd like to say that I just truly admire your courage to be able to doing all of this, And I have two questions. The first one is, what do you think of Hamas and Zionists?
Mm-hmm.
And the last one is, do you get any Malaysian visitors in Israel? Because I'm a Malaysian, and on our passport, we are not allowed to go to Israel at all.
Yeah, we're not allowed to go to Malaysia.
Really?
Mm-mm.
Wow.
No, I can't come and see you and you can't come and see me. But I have a British passport, so I'm a bit lucky in that sense. I can use my British passport. I've got no Israeli stamps on there, it's totally clean. Israelis can't go to Malaysia. I personally haven't met any Malaysians in Israel, so I don't, unless they have dual nationality, I imagine. But in terms of Hamas, I mean, look, Hamas are a legitimate organisation, I think, who are fighting for the struggle, struggling for the freedom of their people. The fact they're using these really bad missiles to do it, I mean, it's not my struggle. It's not up to me to decide the nature of the struggle. There are non-violent aspects and there are violent aspects. I think if we understood it, you say to Israelis, God, if I said that to Israelis, you have no, I even said it to the Board of Deputies. They find it's very difficult for people to swallow. Because they say, oh, what about those kids in Stort? And I have the best example for this. So about 2 months ago, a rocket fell from Gaza into Stort, into an open field, into an agricultural field. And they interviewed the woman on Israeli news, and she said, I feel like it's Protective Ed all over again. And I was like, oh, it was so annoying. Do you really think the occupation or the siege on Gaza ended for 1 second? Like, for Israelis, now we've gone back to life as normal. The occupation has not ended in the West Bank. The siege on Gaza has not ended. It's great that you now feel Protective Edge for like 1 second has just come back, but it never left for the Gazans. It never left for the Palestinians. And Israelis would like, again, to think that Hamas is a terrorist organisation. Why do we define them as terrorists? Because they don't have a flag and they're not a country that's recognised in the United Nations. Why do we call Israel terrorists? It's because they've got a uniform. Because they've got a uniform and they're waving it under a flag, and they're a legitimate, recognised country in the UN. And I think those definitions I think we need to constantly break down as well and explain to people. Look, they're struggling for the rights of their people. They're struggling to end the siege on Gaza. Hamas wrote their manifesto 40 odd years ago. I think, and I remember seeing an interview. And they were saying, look, we tried to target military infrastructure, but we don't have the military infrastructure to target just military infrastructure. Israel has the infrastructure not to target civilians, and it targets civilians.
And also, I know I'm supposed to chair and not interject all the time, but the Likud Charter actually says that no Israeli Prime Minister is allowed to conclude negotiations with a viable Palestinian state. That's actually in the Likud Charter.
And it's interesting. I mean, look at what happened with Iraq and Afghanistan and the UK and the US. At some point, it took 10 years of fighting, but we said, okay, we'll sit down with the Taliban and we'll talk. Right? That's what happened. Why wait 10 years for that to happen here? Like, why don't we just sit down with them now?
Okay, so you've talked about Hamas. How about the Zionists? I want to hear your perspective.
On the Zionists, in general? Oh God.
Because you yourself are
An anti-Zionist.
No, I mean like half Palestinian, half Israeli, right? So I just want to hear from your perspective.
Half English, half Israeli, I guess. I don't think I could call myself Palestinian. I don't think the Palestinians are like that very much. My mum can, because she was born under the British mandate of Palestine. But in terms of the Zionists, Zionism politicised and nationalised a religion. It's a colonialist ideology, it's a political ideology. And I think that's also really important to remember. You know, this isn't a struggle against a religion, this is a struggle against a political ideology. It's even more than an ideology, like it's a real project, it's actually implementing its ideology. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, and finally, because the time's getting on, the lady in the black top.
Yeah. I'm finding your analysis really compelling and useful. Thank you very much. But as someone who's involved in anti-Zion, sort of promoting anti-Zionist discussions amongst sort of the Jewish left and so on, as well as involved in Palestine.
Which is very brave of you to be doing so.
Yeah, well, no, and not terribly successfully. I'm also kind of by trade a psychologist of some kind, and psychotherapist, so I was just thinking about the language that you're using to describe the state of the mental state of Israel.
Yeah.
And I think that as a sort of shorthand, in describing, feeling my own sense of helplessness and incomprehension, I find myself using words like it's insane and so on.
Yeah.
But so I'm very interested in how seriously you mean that, and what the consequences of that might mean for example, there are lots of sort of diaspora Jewish psychotherapists rushing around to try and promote dialogue or discussions or all kinds of things. And I'm fairly sceptical about what those kinds of things can do. But and also I appreciate that your own priorities and my own too, actually, in this kind of arena, are more political than trying to sort of deal with
fix my society or fix their heads. It's funny. I kind of joke about this, and I say to my groups that I take out for tours, we don't need the United Nations, we need an army of psychiatrists to come and sort our heads out. And I just think...
You've got a job for life, Eric.
I just think it's because a lot of our fears are irrational, a lot of our fears are about existential fears, and that's never going to be satisfied. It's never ever going to be satisfied. Even if the Palestinians stopped everything they were doing, and even if Israel made peace with them today and there were two states, like I think Israeli Jews and I think Jews in general, we'd still have this sort of existential. I think there's a lot of things that we haven't really dealt with properly because it's very difficult. Like, okay, take a father who abuses his son and the son grows up to abuse his son. You're dealing with individuals. That's quite an easy thing. It's not easy, but you're dealing with individuals. Take that same analogy to a whole nation of people. My God, how do you even begin? It's really, so I think it's up to individuals to take responsibility for our own mindsets, and then our inner circles, support our inner circles, and then that sort of grows and develops. And for each one of us, I know Israeli Jewish activists who do not do it. They do not talk politics at home. They do not talk to their friends because they just don't want to do it. They don't want to go to the arguments again and again, the same arguments again, and they still don't understand. You give up. You're so exhausted. And I've seen it. I mean, my friend Kobe says to me, I don't know why you bother. I've got one friend, it's taken me 7 years to admit the occupation is wrong. I mean, it's exhausting. So you decide, I'm going to lose my friends, I'm just not going to talk to them. Or family. Just members of my family who I don't talk to and don't talk to me. I'm serious about it though. We've lost our moral compass. We really have lost our moral compass. We're not well. You should hear the things that are being said on the streets. I'm showing very extreme examples, but even really wonderful, lovely people that I know, I saw what they were saying on Facebook and stuff during the summer, and it's like, you're exposing a whole part of yourself that I didn't know existed before. And I study Zen Shiatsu, as my sort of recreation without guilt. It's my my place to go and sort of keep myself going. And essentially, ICAHD was all about unity and oneness and all this stuff. And they're people I studied with, and my God, you should have seen what they were writing during the summer. And it's like, really? So what, it's like oneness and unity for everyone but the Palestinians? And what, you know, what's going on? And we've lost, it's not a rational fear, it's nothing rational, it's irrational, it's emotional, so yeah, I'm very serious about it, we're totally insane.
Thank you very much, Ruth. I just want to say before